Buddy, after some connection issues, internet hates us, especially me. Maybe because I use it too much, but I was worried it wasn't going to happen working. But let me go to YouTube in a second and refresh and see if it's working and you see us, because you never trust YouTube. It is. It is. We're working on YouTube. So back to our previously scheduled chat. Hello, John. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Doing fine. How's things in your neck of the woods? Are things getting better? It's still absolutely crazy. How is it?
Well, spring is trying to get through, but last night it got beaten back by a bit of a frost. I have just Monday, I celebrated 3 weeks since I got my shots, so I'm all vaccinated, and that means I may be able to actually go outside and walk around and go to a restaurant or something.
Good. But you have both shots already?
Yes.
So immunity, yes.
Yeah, one hopes, yes.
Okay, so
variations, but
yeah. And what's the thing you've been missing the most with all this? That now that you're immunized, that the world is in, let's say, crossing fingers again, the world is getting back to normal. What's the first thing that you've been missing that you're dying to do?
I want to go out to the movies. I really like seeing movies in the movie theater. I like the biggest screen that I can see them on. If it's on IMAX, I'll go to IMAX. Mm-hmm. And I have not done that in a year. Haven't gone out to eat. I'm not even sure all my favorite restaurants are still operating. So it's and of course, actually seeing friends live, being able to give a hug, get a hug, even in some cases, just talking to some people, walking around, all those things I think that we're all missing.
Yeah, a friend told me the other day, the thing that I'm missing the most is to be able to take a notepad, sit in a path, not worry that I will kill somebody or somebody will kill me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to be fairly careful. I just had my 72nd birthday yesterday, and so I'm getting up there in years. I have a couple underlying medical conditions that I have to keep telling myself about. So I have to be very careful in terms of the COVID.
Wait, your birthday was yesterday?
Yes, it was.
Belated happy birthday, sir.
Thank you very much.
And do you miss conventions at all?
Well, I've been invited to a few that I had to turn down. I'm getting to the point to where I don't want to do that many conventions anymore. But there are a couple that I wanted to hit this year. I've gotten a couple of invites, and but conventions I generally treat as a working weekend. I don't treat them as a vacation. I'm there to meet the fans, be on panels, and I usually get home and I'm rather tired. Also, there's a thing that I and my Mary call con crud.
Yes,
form of a flu that it's not fun. So I can lose a couple of days after I get back. Anywhere between 1 and 2, maybe up to the week if I get sick.
Imagine a con crud after, in my case, to San Diego, 18 hours flying back home.
Oh, Lord.
That's happened to me coming back from Chicago, New York, San Diego. New York and Chicago, it's direct flights. It's like 7-9 hours. I was going to say it's fine. No, it's not fine, but it's better. But with San Diego and the layovers, you're feeling bad already. You feel like crap. Like, now I have to be on a plane for 18 hours.
Yeah. I anticipate that the next con I go to, I'll have to wear a mask, perhaps, but it depends upon when it is and when I go and what the situation is. Here in Michigan, it's flared up again. In fact, it's the worst in the United States, largely because they came out of seclusion too soon, and too many people here are really dumb about wearing a mask. and that just irritates the life out of me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, what is so difficult about that? It's you wear the mask to protect yourself and others, and some people make it. No, it interferes with my breathing and my freedom. Your freedom to what? To infect others? Maybe.
Your freedom to die. That's what when I stopped because I got tired, but until a month ago, every start of the show was me, berating the people who doesn't wear masks, telling them to wear the fucking mask and telling them to, to be decent.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. The mask is not about protecting you. It's about protecting others from you.
Yeah. I mean, people go to stores that say no shirts, no shoes, no service. Well, it's no different than saying no shirts, no shoes, no mask, no service.
Absolutely.
I do not comprehend what the big deal is. So
no, there is no. I agree. There's no big deal. And by the end of the day, I was mentioning to CB Cebulski and to Howard Chaykin. I had them on Monday.
Yeah.
And I told them, just think that in Spain, in the last year, to say something, the year before, we had like 3,000 cases of the flu. To say so, just a generic number.
Yeah.
The number for 2020 was 7.
Well,
7.
Wow.
So it's like, is the coronavirus bigger and it's taking the space of maybe, but it's also about, not only the mask, about clearing, washing your hands, all that. That says a lot about how we should become after this, about CB has lived in, in Japan for a lot of years. And it's totally accepted in Japan, in Asia in general, to wear a mask in the winter. We should do the same thing. If I can, I'm going to do it because I know I'm going to be safe and I'm going to be elderly people's life safer, just wearing a mask because I'm not going to get the my flu or my whatever I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we now have several different masks. My partner Mary made sure we had. She went out, she researched them, and got the best ones in right at the start of this. So, so we're pretty well equipped with that.
By the end of the day, it's all about caring for others, guys. That's what I can say. Why? Of all the chances you had in life, let me do it the question in a pompous way. Of all the options you have in life, why did you decide to go the masochistic route, which is making comics?
Because I got an opportunity. First of all, I always loved comics, going back to early days in grade school, and it was compounded by the fact that my mother, she either read or heard of Seduction of the Innocent. And believed that all superhero comics were evil and might turn me into a juvenile delinquent. So so they're forbidden. So of course I had to have them.
Yeah.
As a funny kid, if it's forbidden, you have to have it. So I read and loved comics years and years and years, and eventually, and this is when I was already out of college and stuff. My friend Mike Gold, who I've known for years and years and years and years, helped start up First Comics, and he knew I loved comics, and he liked how I had written plays, including I co-wrote a play called Bloody Bess, and he liked that a lot. So he wanted to see what I would do in the comics industry. He gave me a shot, and from there, the rest, as I say, is hysteria. But I love reading to start with. I always have 2 or 3 books around me that I'm currently reading, and so taking that and then transferring it into comics, I want to give back some of the enjoyment and love that I've gotten from it. So wanting to give back, I went into writing and got a shot, and lo, I made a career out of it.
And what is the most fulfilling part for you as a writer? And I mean, not even when you get to the point of, typing, because I was talking to Jason Aaron, and I loved that he told me that the moment for him where he does most of the work is when, he's just sitting like this, looking at the ceiling or something like, just thinking. It's like that's where the real process of writing happens. And
Yeah.
that's when more people interrupt him because they think he's not working. So is this the same for you? The real process happens before you start typing?
Each part of the process has its own pleasures and its own problems. Where I do my thinking is in notebooks like these.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can get that in there.
Yep.
I like the leather bound or the hardbound versions of it, but you can have anything in terms of a journal. And I like to journal because that's where a lot of it comes together. I'm a firm believer in if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. If you have it just in your head, it's going to evaporate. So also, there's something about when I'm writing in the journal, I have my pen, and it's like the thoughts come, or the plots come from my head and my heart, and then go down my arm and through the pen and through the ink and onto the page, and then I can see it. Once I can see it, then I can go here, there, anywhere where the plot seems to lead. But the inception part of it is a very pleasant time. I mean, for every plot I actually use, I must have 50 that get discarded somewhere along the way. Sometimes when you write it down, you go, yeah, okay, oh no, that's stupid, I'm not going to use that, and so you go on to the next.
So it's even the notebook is even a way to discard things and to make sure that something works. It's your proof machine to make it. The moment you read it, it's like telling it to somebody else and realizing, no, you know what, that doesn't work.
Yeah. What seemed like a good idea at the time turns out, once you actually write it down, to be fairly stupid. And at that point, then you discard it. But you haven't spent really that much time on it. Usually with a plot, by the time I get done writing the initial paragraph, in terms of just the idea, I know whether or not it's a good idea or not. I've been known to stop even in mid-sentence and go, no, forget it. On the other hand, when it starts to work, and this is where the real pleasure comes in, is when you get a kind of tingly sensation. You feel like, yes, there's something here, and then you have to tease it out. You have to see, well, does this connect to that? Where does this lead to? Where does that path go? You're walking in the landscape of your own imagination, and the paths that you find there can be very, very, very interesting.
There's also a part of it that, as you say, the thing is sensation. I always relate comics a lot more than to music than I relate them to movies. Because I always feel that the comics storytelling is in a way, it's a rhythm, it's a pace, it's music. So let me ask you this: if I asked you about comics storytelling, what is it for you? Is it rock and roll? Is it jazz? Or is it a symphony? What would you say?
It depends, because I often use music in my writing. Sometimes I'll find a story idea in a song that will create a feeling or an image, and that I want to explore that more, which means I'll play the same music over and over again. Sometimes it can be rock and roll. It can be symphony. I often use soundtrack music. I'm a big fan of movie soundtracks because they are meant to convey emotion at the given time, and that lets my mind and heart follow where the music seems to be leading. But music is very, very important to my process.
That's what the other part I was going to ask you about. And if you're working with music, or radio, or a podcast, or even a movie in the background, as some people does, it depends on the part of the process. I mean, for example, if you're at the beginning thinking about the plot, you need absolute silence. And then when you're actually, scripting, you can have sounds around and not get distracted. Or is it you need silence during the whole process, or you need music during the whole process?
I dip in and out of it. There's sometimes when I prefer silence around unless the cats decide to wander in. But I prefer to have music that doesn't have, say, like lyrics in it when I'm actually working. Other words get in the way of my words.
Yes.
So I'm more into just the instrumental music, be it soundtracks, be it symphony, classical. My taste in music tends to be fairly large, like widespread, and doing so fills me up. Fills me up. My late wife Kim Yale used to talk about restocking the fish pond. When you're going for ideas, like if you just keep on doing that without replenishing the pool, you're going to fish it out. It's not going to have anything there when you need it. And when you are on deadline, you need to have a fish there, and you need to hook it pretty quick.
As I always say, panic is the perfect tool to have a lot of good ideas, right?
Yeah. You have to squeeze it out of you. I suppose it would be if, well, the quickest I've ever done a complete script is like literally over a weekend for a 22-page story. But generally, I like to take a longer time when I'm doing it. So, and I think I've sort of drifted away from whatever point I was making or whatever question you were asking. Did I come anywhere near to answering that question?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And also, there's another part of it, which is, do you think that Greg Capullo told me this weeks ago, and I love the answer, because people was asking him about his artwork, the tools he uses, and if he's still getting influences after so many years. And he was telling me, look, most of the times you don't even know. You just it keeps adding to your mind library. And there's something in there, somebody tells you, oh, it looks like somebody, or like you were influenced by somebody, and he's like, maybe I don't even know, maybe I saw that 15 years ago, I didn't get into my head, and now is that something that you feel is happened to you during the years as a writer, that your fish pond, that you were saying, gets bigger and bigger, and that gives you a lot more tools to write?
Yeah, I think so. After all, one of the prime things I think for all art, but I'll speak for writing, is what are your experiences of life? What have you actually gone through? What do you know as opposed to what you were taught to know?
Yeah.
What have you internalized? Because it's that you're working from. That's the raw material. We incarnate words. Words help us to incarnate the various ideas that we have. And in that way, I suppose, it's a little bit like God. God incarnated the world from whatever stuff was within God. And I tell the stories from whatever is in me, whatever works out through me. That's the way I know how to write.
Yeah, creation is creation as a writer, an artist, as an artist in general. It's also akin to being a god, right? Because you create worlds.
Yeah, and people, and situations, and in fact, this will sound like a segue, but it's actually true. When they were making the first Suicide Squad movie, and I got a chance to meet Will Smith, who was playing Deadshot, and I told him, actually, out of all the characters, you're one of the ones I was most afraid to meet. And he looked shocked and surprised. He says, "Why?" And I said, because I've done terrible things to Deadshot, and to actually have Deadshot there in person in front of me is a little scary.
That makes sense. And also, writing is. Do you think that being a writer is also in a big way being a sponge. Like walking around everywhere, in your hometown, whatever, and
Mm.
just picking things. Sometimes don't even realizing you're doing it, but just being like always trying to be in sync with the world around you, because that's where most of the ideas have to come from, right? From the things you see and experience.
Oh, yeah. And actually, sometimes that process gets me a little bit into trouble because I'll see something and it will attract my attention, like the seed of a story. It,
Hmm.
it could be a seed of a story. So I keep on staring at it. And if it's a person, they can get upset with me for like
Hmm.
staring at them,
Yeah.
especially if it's a female. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
they may not like my staring at them. I'm going, no, 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 it's not like that. I'm not doing. I'm a writer, and oh yes, yes, that explains everything. Not at all. You know, so I once almost got into a fight because I was walking along the street and I saw this couple by a car. I can still see the image. It was a red kind of sports car, and they're standing by it, and they were having this big argument. And the sound and the look of it, how they were standing and looking at each other, and what they were saying, made me think, oh, story, or entered the story side of my brain. And so I just stood there watching, and the guy finally turns to me and goes, "Can I help you?" No, thank you. I'm going to go over here now. So so please, if you meet me and I'm staring at you, you're probably almost engendering a story. It's nothing personal.
Yes,
Uh,
you gotta like it, guys. When you're in front of a writer, especially John, just wait. He's taking notes. It's not nothing bad. Nothing bad's
yeah,
gonna happen.
yeah. I should put on one of those badges that say, "Hello, I'm a writer.
I am safe.
I'm safe. I'm invisible." Uh, there's a story of Neil Simon, the American playwright, and those who knew him well said that one day they were walking down a New York sidewalk, and there was someone who had an accident or something, but they fell on the ground, and everybody else was running up to see what they could do to help, and he just stood there watching. And somebody asked him why, and he says, "I'm a writer. You know, you think you turn invisible, that people can't see you as you note what's going on, as you observe."
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we can't turn invisible. So
Yes, that doesn't work.
it doesn't work.
You've collaborated with a lot of artists. Many cases, especially with Tom Mandrake, but a lot of times with different artists. For you, do you feel it's better to give them the tightest possible script, or it depends on the level of trust you have with the artist? How loose it is your script for them.
Um, it's I pace it so that I try to uh, uh, let's see it's not real loose. I try to pace it so that the pacing of the story is clear, but they also know, every artist who I worked with on a regular basis knows that they are free to change what my ideas of the visual should be if they feel it's a better story.
Mhm.
Everything that we do should be at the service of the story, because the story is at the service of the fan, of
Mhm.
the reader. So I I I try to write it so that they have enough to know what's going on. If I'm writing a full script, excuse me, my cats are being annoying. Um, yep, took a squirt gun. Uh, they don't pay rent, so they don't get to enter into the conversation. Um, but my scripts I generally break down to page and panel, a small quick description of what I think happens in the panel, and the dialogue. They know that I want to keep the dialogue. I mean, once it's there in the script, it's there for a reason. So they don't try to change that. But in terms of the pacing of it, sometimes some of the artists like Jan Dersma will combine two of the panels together into one panel, and thus all the dialogue fits into that as well. So um, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mhm.
You know, I'm not the artist. They are not my hands. They have a right to contribute their own unique ability and genius.
Hmm. And there's also a part of it that only comics can create, I think, which is, there's your writing, there's the art, but it's never going to be exactly how the artist envisioned it or exactly how you envision as a writer. So you guys create a third entity who's like the real creator, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it has its own life and
Hmm.
its own demands as well. Excuse me for a second.
Yeah.
So, what you're trying to create is something. It is an independent entity. You know,
Hmm.
like the story. Excuse me. Um, excuse me. I'm going to take a
Yeah,
sneeze.
drink. We're not in any rush. Just drink, please. I'm gonna do the same.
Okay, that should help. Yes, relax, 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 relax. And anyways, where was I? We're talking about
I
what
was
were we?
talking about the third entity is created by when the
Yes,
artist and the
yes,
writer puts things together.
yeah. I always I know people who can never read their own work. I always want to read the book when it comes out because I want to encounter it as then the reader encounters it.
Hmm.
You know, I've had people come up to me and say, "Well, in your story, there was this, and this, and did that mean this, and this?" And sometimes what they're talking about, I go, "Oh, that's new. I never thought of that." But instead, what I say is, "Ah, okay, you caught that. Very good, very good."
That's what I was gonna say. How important do you think it is in comics? I think it's the art form where it's more important. The participation of the reader, because the reader can interpret comics in many many ways depending on the way they look at the art or the writing. How fascinating it is for you when that happens. When people comes with interpretations. J.M. de Matteis told me that somebody told him about the Spider-Man story he wrote 35 years after he wrote it. He still gets new interpretations for that story, and it's always fascinating to him that people comes up with things that he never thought about. How is it
Yeah,
for you?
yeah. I get that. Sometimes, well, everyone brings something different to the work. You know, I bring something to it, but so does the reader, and they
Hmm.
bring their own experiences. Um, it's like an electric current.
Hmm.
It needs both ends. It needs the positive and the negative in order for the electricity to flow.
Hmm.
And my basic feeling has always been that uh, I do owe something to the reader. If someone is paying money,
Hmm.
good money, for something that I wrote, you know, or was a part of, my job is to make sure that they get their money's worth just from the writing alone, because that's the
Hmm.
part I control.
Yeah.
And if I don't, that way, if the art is good, the coloring, the lettering, the cover, the whatever in it is also good, then they're getting more for their money,
Hmm.
which is good value. If I don't do that, then I feel that I have my hand in the reader's pocket and I'm swiping
Hmm.
their money. You know, my job is to make sure that they get what they're paying for,
Hmm.
which is a good story. I love story myself, and so I want to make sure that I tell a good story and that I share a good story.
Hmm. How important are page turns for you as a writer?
How important is what?
Page turns.
Well, that's one of the ways. That's one of the things that I was taught is that the last panel on every page should make you want. Should immediately lead to the first panel on the next page. You know,
Hmm.
if it's a turn page, then you want the reader to turn the page. You know, there are reasons why we call some stories page turners. It's because you can't read it fast enough. Um, One of the tricks I was taught is that if you're going to do a punch in the latter part of the page, the last panel of one page pulls back and it's about to be a punch. but it doesn't connect until the first panel of the next page.
Mm-hmm.
That way, because the reader is always connecting between panels. You know, it's someone once said that it's in the gutters of the book where all the action is actually happening.
Yeah, yeah, Scott McCloud. Yeah,
yeah. So we don't see it, or the reader doesn't see it, but somehow they do see it.
mm-hmm.
And the pacing and how you pace the pages are all very important.
Yeah. I remember that Stanley used to tell artists that in the 60s and 70s, never show the middle of the action. In Marvel it wasn't allowed. It had to the pulling or the punching, or the step before running or the step after running. It's like never show the middle, because that's not comics. Comics should be about before and after, and the readers' minds should be covering the rest, right?
Yeah. They're the ones who create the film, the movie. They create the motion. They hear the voices.
And that's also something that I tell in schools, and one of the reasons I push for comics to be taught from primary school, from a very young age, is that it gives the readers, between brackets, it gives the readers superpowers. Which I mean, comics readers, as you know, we don't need. This is Superman. The moment we see the S, we don't need all the steps until Superman is flying. The moment we see that, everything else is covered by us.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell that's very important, because if you start reading comics at a young age, then when you read a newspaper, watch a movie, TV show, read a magazine, etc., comic readers never take anything for granted. We automatically look for we read between the lines, to say, in a way, because that's how our brain works. So we see art in a different way. We just think it's much better and deep way to look at art, right?
Yeah, because it's the reader's imagination that we're engaging. So that way we are somewhat a cross between motion pictures, TV, and books.
Mm-hmm.
We find elements of both into it, but it's the reader really who creates that sense of motion.
Yeah.
People can say, well, no, I create for myself. Well, if you're creating only for yourself, then you're very selfish.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, ultimately, we're telling stories as though we're way back in time and we're around a campfire and we're telling these stories,
mm-hmm.
and we want to engage people in it, and you have to give them their space. You have to give them room
mm-hmm.
to do what they do, and they're very important to the process.
And it's also about less is more, right? In a big way in comics, it's like you don't need to telegraph it, give all the details. You just need to suggest it. And pattern recognition, as I always say, is an amazing tool, because you just give the hints and the reader, we know, is going to feel it, right?
I think that's very true. I think for any artist, they what they put down on paper, it's not just decorative or because they want to draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Every line in every panel should be forwarding the story, the character development, the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Everything should be connected to that. Sometimes, for instance, like you get someone who's a genius like George Perez and draws very detailed backgrounds. Mary Mitchell, when she draws, also she has in mind a very definite place, and she
mm-hmm.
draws it. And yes, it takes more time, but it gives you a real sense of feeling for the locale, and thus for the story. It's all telling something about what we need to know
mm-hmm.
in order to most fully enjoy the story.
Absolutely. We were mentioning Scott McCloud before, and that brought a question to me. When you're creating a story, does it come to you from a emotional point of view or a structural point of view? What I mean is, are you more a structure guy or are you more an emotion guy? What guides you to pick stories or to create them?
I'm probably a bit of both, because the emotion is what, again, provides that initial spark to what you're doing. But then I know structure pretty well,
mm-hmm.
and I can make and I can usually make something happen within that structure. I can also figure out what to leave out and what to drop as it goes on. You know, sometimes the initial image or something like that will be something that I will ultimately not use because it's done its job. It's started the story for me, but then it has no place in the story itself, or not one that is worth keeping.
And have your characters ever, not literally, because I know you're not crazy. I am crazy. You're not. But your characters, first arc, everything is going amazing. Second arc, everything is going great. Third arc, suddenly your characters start like, no, you're wrong. This is not what should happen. Stop it, change it, or I'm not going to let you finish it.
Oh yeah. I remember with my character Grimjack. Now this is my characters,
which makes it even worse.
Yes, I know. And also, he's one of the characters whose voice I really hear. There are a couple of characters like that when I'm dialoguing, it's just like I'm taking down dictation. They say what they say, and I just write it down. And Grimjack certainly has been one of those. And it's necessary because not only does he talk in the story, but he also narrates the story in first person. And I got to an issue where the story was going in this direction, and Grimjack said, no, I don't want to do this. I said, well, too bad. I'm the creator. This is where we're going. And the bastard stopped talking to me for the entire issue. It's like trying to pull teeth. And people that I tell this to, some of them think, well, this guy's a little demented, but no, that's what happens. And he didn't talk to me for the rest of the issue. I had to make everything up. And he came back for the next issue. He was no longer on strike. But yeah, sometimes they go on strike.
Yeah. Greg Rucka was telling me that it happened to him with a novel. Yeah, he got to the third arc and all characters, started rebelling. So, and no one, all of them. And like, this is not working. This is not me. You're wrong. And he tried to push it. And he literally had to stop 3 months. He couldn't write a word. So he had to go back and redo the whole third arc until the characters agreed, because they were all on strike. It wasn't only one; it was all the characters.
Yeah. You have to trust the characters. When the characters tell you to go in a certain direction, just because you had it plotted another way, no, you got to go where the characters are telling you to go. There's something in it that that the characters have shown along the way. And they're telling you that this other way won't work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do it. So that it's something inside of you that says it's a new story. It's a different story. And that's a lot of work to stop and go back and re-examine, toss out what you've done, and then you're going back to figure out, okay, where is this supposed to go? And that's a lot of work, and you don't want to do it, especially if you're on a deadline. You're going, just do what I tell you. And the characters are actually smarter.
Yeah. And is there any occasion when you just created, a guy like, let's say, a red shirt from Star Trek, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, these characters that, I'm going to use it 5 minutes and that's it. And suddenly that character said, no, I'm important. You are going to use me much more. And in fact, you're going to keep me in your book. Has that happened to you?
Never to where they have said, give me the book. But there are some characters who start off as throwaway characters. But I also have a general rule that if I'm going to use a character, if they got lines, I should give them a name. If I give them a name, then I got to know something about them. So all of that is more work. And sometimes it's not a lot of work. You don't have to put a lot down. But they made something that you suddenly find useful or that you want to explore more. And so you bring them back for other stories. There are a lot of characters that I've done in different books that start off really as like just one-shot characters for one story. And in Star Wars, in the Star Wars Republic series that I had with that Jan Dursman and I did, in our very first arc, we invented Ayla Secura, and I was going to kill her off at the end of the story, and Jan said, oh, my daughter Jan really likes her. And I said, well, okay, I can't disappoint her. So we kept her in, and all of a sudden, yes, as you said, she was in a lot. She had her own stories. So, and she wound up in the animated series as well, and even wound up in the background on some of the movies. So, yeah, she wound up being a pretty important character.
Good, good, good. And this is for you. What are the elements that you think are absolutely necessary to make a story work? That you think you're like, if my story doesn't have this, it's never going to work.
Um, Depends upon what the story is about, and the
Mm-hmm.
about is not necessarily the most obvious thing. Alfred Hitchcock was famous to have the Macguffin, which he
Yeah.
defined as that thing which the characters care a lot about, and the audience doesn't really give a damn. What they care about is the characters. It acts as a device to make the action go.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's not really important. It's how the characters react to it and how they come out of it, and does so and so get together with so and so. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So, not everything in the story, even if it's the thing that's making the story go, is actually as important.
Mm-hmm. So all plots have to be character driven. So and then what they taking that then the question around, what do characters need to have to be interesting to you as a writer first, and then to the reader?
One of the things, and I've done this also when I've been teaching, is I look for contradictions
Mm-hmm.
in them. They're this, but they're also that, the opposite of it.
Mm-hmm.
When I do a class, I list a bunch of adjectives on one side of a paper describing some character. Um, Usually, I use friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, brave, clean, and reverent. Boy Scout. Then I draw the line and say, okay, let's pick a word that's the opposite of that, but you can't use un or non. It has to be something that has more thought to it. And what happens, or what I tell people by the time we've done that, I said, if this side is true about the character, if this is a given, so is that.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you can show that. Now, the question is how? In what way? I love this. Well, okay, what is it that you love? What do you hate? Well, okay, how do you hate it? How much do you hate it? Like, what is the degree to which you hate it?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can love. It can be used in many different ways. I remember a girl I was once dating told me that uh, that if I had to choose between her and a chocolate cake, I would have to think hard. And I told her, no, you're exaggerating. I would always choose you with deep regret for having lost that chocolate cake. So that is, it's the question of what do you mean by love? What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean by hate? What does that character mean by it? How far will they go in terms of driving it? A character may think that they're after this thing, A, in the Maltese Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
It's the black bird. They're all they think they're after that, but for Sam Spade, it comes down to who killed my partner and how will they pay.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what becomes important
Yeah.
in the story, and that's what drives the story and drives Sam Spade in the story.
Mm-hmm. Is there any difference for you? I mean, do you use the same muscles when you write stuff that you own, like Grimjack, for example, compared to when you write? I hate the term, but you know what I mean. Company-owned characters,
Yeah.
Marvel, DC, Lucasfilm, whatever. Is there any different muscles that you use because you own them, or of course, I know that as a writer, you always try to do the best possible work, but unconsciously, is there a difference?
There's control,
Mm-hmm.
certainly. I can control characters that I own. I have more control over. When I was at DC, I had a lot of control over the characters because DC at the time was very interested in recreating characters or having new concepts. That's why I was able to do Suicide Squad and why I had some freedom with it. You know, like, I appreciate that a lot. You know, I don't need an editor to come in and tell me, you know, like, well, no, or to rewrite my plot or to rewrite my dialogue. If they're going to do that, I'm out of there. You know, the writing is my responsibility and it has my name on it. If it's got my name on it, I have to be very careful. You know, it has to be at least, I mean, if they want to make little edits, if they want to take something out, and particularly if they tell me, I will usually agree because I'm always looking to make the story better. But my name is what I sell. You know, that's the only thing I've got. I'm only as good as my last story. That's what. If someone is hiring me, then they're hiring me because of what I've done before, in the expectation that the thing that they're hiring me to do will be as good or better, and that's my job.
Yeah, absolutely. By the end of the day, they're using your name, so they gotta. If they don't like what you do, just hire somebody else, right?
Yeah. Get someone close or write it yourself. You know, a lot of editors have been writers, so you know, if you're that clear on what you want, then you do it. But,
and also, is there any difference between that you feel as a writer between Marvel, DC character, and the Star Wars characters, or by the end of the day, they are all characters?
They're all characters. They all there's certain things that will work in one universe better than in another universe, but you have to be you have to know the characters. You have to know what they do. There needs to be a continuity in those characters. Excuse me. And so you're trying to fit it into the universe in which you're writing. So yeah, there are differences from universe to universe to universe, but you take that into account. But characters are characters, and you play what you know.
Yeah, let me see. There's some questions and comments here. Iruno, hello. Comic Crack, morning, everyone. Morning. Happy birthday, says Iruno.
Thank you.
Felipe González Hernández says, hello, Mr. Ostrander. A pleasure to have you here. I followed your work so many years. How did you remember your first step in the comic book industry? It was exciting. It was an exciting time to begin with creating your own work, or do you feel more interested with the creations you did at DC?
Well, I love creating my own stuff because I have that degree of control over it. There's a sense of ownership, and no one's going to tell me that I'm writing Grimjack wrong. You know, I write it. Excuse me while I tame a cat.
No worries.
Don't know why they're being so bad today. Most days they just lie down and sleep.
Yeah, they want attention.
Yeah, they want attention, and maybe they want to get on the show. I don't know, but okay. I was saying,
talking about the creation, the creator on the control.
Oh yeah. Well, working for DC is a better guarantee of your dollars, of your paycheck, of work. I got a lot of work from DC and eventually from Marvel. And certainly I was doing Star Wars for 10 years. So, and there's a pleasure to doing it. I was a fan of Star Wars from before the first movie. I'd gotten a hold of the novelization at my local comic book store. I saw it there on the counter. I said, oh, this looks interesting. I bought that as well, went home, read it, said, no, that's pretty good. They can get about half of what's in the book on the movie. You know, it'll be a lot of fun. And then I went to see the movie, and they had 200% of what was in the book in the movie. So I went, wow. So, and once again, I distracted myself. But each one of those places has its own rules, guidelines, a feel for it. You know, again, with Star Wars, Jan Dursman and I were able to create good Star Wars stories because we knew Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if your character can be fitted into any one of those universes, well, okay, that's not much of a character, really. You know, the characters that I wrote for Suicide Squad, you know, those were DC characters,
Mm-hmm.
and I treated them as such. I explored them perhaps a little bit more, but they needed to fit into that DC universe. The Marvel characters that I played with, those two, there were certain things established about them, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that you could just ignore it and go off and do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you have to respect what the characters are and what they've done.
That brings another question. For you, continuity is, it's like a chain, or it's something that if you're clever, you can use it to your advantage.
Uh, the latter, especially if you're allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and different places, again, have different degrees of tightness. For instance, when I first started working at DC, well, this was shortly after Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Yeah.
and everything was up in the air. You could do anything. You know, I didn't have to stick to the Suicide Squad that had appeared for 5 issues
Mm-hmm.
back in the 50s. I could do it my own way, which I certainly did. And but in Star Wars, no, that's a very tightly controlled unit. In fact, one of the ways that I wound up being a regular writer on Star Wars, because at the time, the book was an anthology, and they would have different writers and artists come in for each arc. I said, okay, you can continue to do that, but if you have your own characters that you can control, you know, if you keep it just to the established Wars characters, well, then there are limits to what you can do because they're going to be tied up in the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create your own characters, well, then this becomes the only place. This comic book becomes the only place where the reader can see those stories, see those characters. So if you create good characters, and they're in the Star Wars universe, and it feels like Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
you'll have a better base. No, and it doesn't depend upon who does it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or who winds up being the writer and artist. I said, of course, it should be me, but and they finally agreed to that.
Mm-hmm.
But you do that so that the reader has something unique that they can't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And also, I guess that doing that allows you to get more freedom to work from Lucasfilm, right? Not so much control because it wasn't the main movie characters.
There was some more freedom, but everything that we did, from the plot to the script to the pencils to the ink to the colors to the letters to the cover, had to be approved
Yep.
by Lucasfilm. You know, they had approval at every step on the way. Now, what was fortunate for Jan, I knew Star Wars fairly well. Jan knew it incredibly well. And so we would send our stuff in and we get our notes back and saying, well, we don't think that this would maybe happen. We say, well, okay, we'll change it if you want. However, in this story or in this movie, or they did this, this, and this, which is pretty much the same thing.
Mhm.
And they would come back and go, oh, okay. Okay. And finally got to the point where they just said, are you sure about this? And we go, yeah. And they go, fine. You know, they would just let us go because they trusted us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had earned that trust, but they did trust us to do it. And that's why we got to do things like Legacy,
Mm-hmm.
like Agent of the Empire, like Dawn of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they trusted us to know what was Star Wars and what was not Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. So it became, in a way, that they knew how much you knew of Star Wars. So they knew they could trust you, right? It's, in a way, it's just that.
Yeah. For them, it became easier. You know, like, they sometimes got people who came in and they wanted to fix the plot holes that existed. Well, no, they're not going to let you do that. You're not going to rewrite continuity. Not for a comic book, you sure aren't. You know, so they learned that they could pretty much trust us and with what we were doing.
Okay. So Victor Heracue says, hi from Colombia, Mr. Ostrander. Let me see. Drink and Draw Costa Rica. Hello from Costa Rica, Mr. Ostrander. It's great to have you with us. Thank you. Pedro Mercado says, happy birthday, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you.
Comic Crack says, April 20 is a great day for a birthday. It's mine as well. Okay, happy shared birthday to both of you. Felipe González asks, I love your Suicide Squad. I would like to know if the Raise the Flag miniseries and the shocking revelation was always planned. It's something that intrigues me a lot.
When I killed off Rick Flag, I already had what I called the back door in my mind, that I could do it, that I could bring him back. So from the moment that I did that, yeah, I knew how to do it. Some of the other surprises that were in it, some of it was influenced by the Bourne movies, where he wasn't who he thought he was, and I made Rick Flag. I threw that in on Rick Flag. I think in retrospect, I wouldn't do that now, but in fact, I'm not entirely sure I would have brought Rick back after all that time. But I'm not sorry I did it, and wound up being a good story. So that was the justification, I think.
And the art was fantastic.
Yeah.
I gotta say it. I represent the guys.
Yeah.
Javi Pina did an amazing work. Let me see. Pedro Mercader asks, how was it creating with that mad genius of Del Cole?
Oh, all right. Do you have another hour?
Yeah, let's go for it.
For those of you who don't know, well, Del and I co-wrote some Untitled and then Wasteland together. Del Close was the director at the Second City in Chicago, which was the original Second City, for like 20 years or more, and he was the teacher there as well before he went off to what is now called IO, and it's another improv group, and he taught there and directed there, and he was a genius, like mad, yeah, perhaps, but a genius nonetheless. And I don't use that word very often. I think he's virtually the only person that I ever personally met who is a genius. Most people don't realize that he is a major influence on comedy in America in the latter part of the 20th century. He influenced people who have also influenced people who have also influenced people. So his influence extends far out and wide. I took some improv classes from Del, and that was very beneficial to me as a writer. I was still an actor at the time, but I told him, like when he said, well, why don't you come find, you can attend some of the classes. And I said, I don't want to go. I'm not really interested in Second City or going on to Saturday Night Live. And he said, perfect. That's exactly who I want. I've got all these people who want to do that. He'd rather have lawyers and writers and other people because he was interested in the form of improvisation. And he was brilliant. We worked several different ways. He and I would sit down and work out something together, or he would come in with a sheet of several plot ideas, or maybe a full story, which I would then adapt into comic book script format. And some stories he didn't show up for at all. So, and all of that was part of Del, part of working with Del. I worked out well because I was able to. Not everyone I think could work with Del.
Let me see. Felipe says, many thanks for the Spectre. It was a great series with a great story, philosophical and religious background, as well as having great characters. Martian Manhunter is still one of your greatest stories. How do you remember working in those comic books?
What, in the Spectre?
Spectre and or Martian Manhunter.
Oh, Martian Manhunter. Both were done with my great buddy Tom Mandrake.
Mhm.
And Tom is one of those people. You look when you're working for an with an artist is to get synced with them. So you're writing for them. You can shorthand things. Uh, Sometimes with Tom, with Jan, uh, with a few others, Tim Truman. Sometimes I would get to a scene and I would, on the sideline, write SMA, which stood for Save My Ass, meaning that there's a lot of boring stuff that's happening here. It's got to be dialogue. Make it look interesting, would you? And they would respond, with other things. Sometimes they would send me a Save My Ass back in that. Make the dialogue really crisp here because, I'm kind of winging it through the pencils here at this point. So, but working with Tom is always a delight. We also later on did this vampire hunter called Cross, and that was our most recent work together. But it's always a pleasure to work with Tom. He's incredibly fast, but he's also he's brilliant. He's brilliant, as is Jan. Different talents, but wonderful talents.
And those different talents also make your brain work in different ways, right? Because you know their strengths and you know what they like to do, and sometimes you want to challenge them. Like I want to challenge Tim, or I want to challenge Jan or Tom with something that they don't like to do as much, but we need to do it for the story. And
I will do that if I have to, but generally by the second or third time, or second or third story that we do together, I know where their strengths lie, and they're looking to do what interests them, what excites them, and what they can do and keep on deadline, because they're also making a living out of this. So I don't want to challenge them. I don't need to challenge them. They tend to challenge themselves. Cause they look for new ways of doing certain things, but I try to include things that appeal to them. A joke with Tom is he loves to draw or zombies, as we refer to them. So if I can find a way in a story to include a flaming zombie, even in the background, Tom will be very happy. So,
was it difficult for you to? I always say that that writing is, well, being an artist, but a writer always puts, even unconsciously, parts of himself in what he writes, because absolutely objectivity doesn't exist. So how difficult it was for you to relate to the Spectre when you were doing that book?
The question with the Spectre was not so much the Spectre himself, but Jim Corrigan.
Yeah.
Corrigan was where we made our biggest change, and our I think was our greatest success. It wasn't the Spectre's story; it was Jim Corrigan's story. A lot of people treated him as, oh my God, I got to do. We want to get to the Spectre and the cool stuff, but Jim Corrigan held the story together and gave you the reason for all the special effects that the Spectre was capable of doing, which was a lot. People used to tell us when we said we wanted to do the Spectre, they said, well, okay, you only be able to do about 6 to 8 plots before you wind up repeating yourself, or you'll have to downsize his powers because he's just too big. And we said, no, give him to us. We know how to do it. And the secret was focusing on Jim Corrigan's character. With the Spectre, you wanted to have that kind of visual, what I call iconography. There are certain things that we associate with the Spectre doing certain types of demonstrations of his power, in order to make it a Spectre story, not a story about somebody else. So those big things were in Martian Manhunter. Our goal was to flesh out the character as much as we could. We felt that he wasn't fully developed as a character, and that we wanted to show how he was different than Superman. Too often he was treated as sort of a green-skinned Superman. And we found lots of differences right from the start. Kal-El came to Earth as a baby, and whatever else you may think about Superman, he was born on Krypton, but he was raised as an American. He was raised in Kansas. Martian Manhunter came to Earth as a full adult. So, any coming up? No, okay. So my cat is making signs that he wants to come up, and then he doesn't want to because he's a cat. But we wanted to explore his society. What did he come from? How did that make him different than Superman? He had a few different powers, but a lot of the ones that were the same. So we used the book to really more explore his society and who he was.
But in a way, the Spectre and Martian Manhunter, literally and figuratively, they are both aliens to us, because of the powers. So the challenge for you and Tom had to be make them relatable, right? Give them background that made people relate to them, right?
Yeah. And again, with Spectre, that was Jim Corrigan. You're going to relate to Jim Corrigan more, and then the Spectre is the eye candy. With Martian Manhunter, it's if you don't know him as a character, then why are you going to? If you don't care about the characters in the story, then the story doesn't matter. It's a way to waste about 20 minutes.
Absolutely. Drinkandro Costa Rica says, you recast Barbara Gordon into her Oracle persona. You brought back a detective side to comics in a contemporary setting. Did you see the need for her? Did you see the need for her to go back to being Batgirl again, and why?
That was not my decision, not my choice. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have made it. I think Gail Simone did a fine job with the assignment. She was a big fan of Batgirl. I felt that Barbara was better developed and more important to the DC universe as Oracle. She fulfilled when Kim Yale and I created her. We realized that if we did this right, she would be a character that a lot of other writers would want to use because she was the information hub. If a character had to learn something and the writer didn't want to spend time with them hunting, going to the library and tracking it down, well, no, they can just call Barbara. Barbara looks it up, boom, they get next page, they're on to the adventure.
So yeah, but by the end of the day, this is my opinion, I didn't care about Barbara Gordon Batgirl, but as a reader, I was a lot more interested in Barbara Gordon Oracle. I think she had a lot more depth, and it was a much more important character to the DCU. And the moment, again, I loved Batgirl by Gale, nothing against her, nothing against Gale or the book. But the moment when she became Batgirl again, she lost most of the interest to me because she couldn't be that type of information. She couldn't be that central character for the DCU anymore. She just couldn't.
The thing also is there is. I'm not sure of the exact phrase or how they prefer to be used. I knew them as the handicapped community. I don't know if that's the proper phrase to use anymore. The differently abled, but they felt a connection to Barbara as Oracle because she was like them. In fact, in our origin story for Oracle, Kim was very definite that she wanted to show a page of how difficult it was to move, to just get into a cab when you're confined to a wheelchair. How do you maneuver that? And so we spent an entire page doing it because we felt it was important to understand some of the difficulties of that lifestyle.
Let me see. Pedro Mercader asks you, from all the characters you've worked on, what is the one you relate the most?
Oh, yes. Which child do I like most?
Yes, that's not a
Um,
fair question, Pedro. Just so you know.
yeah. So that's as much answer as you're going to get on that one. Sorry.
Okay. He also
I
asked,
will tell a story. I will tell a story. Sure,
"Yes, go
because
please."
this is also related. I would do this for the same thing. I was out on a panel with Stephen Grant, and we were asked what issue would you not? What's your least favorite issue?
Mhm.
And so I picked one out and said, "Oh yeah, this. If I could burn all the copies of that, I would do that in a second." And there was this guy sitting in the front row who looked stricken, and he said, that was my favorite one." So I learned never, ever to identify something as my least favorite story or character. Never, never,
Mhm.
never.
Yes, that's not a good idea. Pedro asked, "How was it to be on the set of Suicide Squad?"
Oh wow! You mean the movie coming out,
Hmm?
right?
I guess so. Well, this
Yeah,
this or the other one, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I was invited down to do my cameo. Uh, I have a cameo of in it, my Stan Lee moment, and it was incredible. It was just incredible. I went down to Atlanta, and they couldn't have been nicer. They treated me royally. You know, I had my own trailer. You know, I talked with lots of people. Uh, he was he was just great. It was
Mhm.
just great. It was one of the more fun experiences of my life, to be honest.
Cool. Loffenhauer asks, how was the experience of working with Carlos Pacheco on Bishop? Did he throw a lot of ideas at you or not? And how did you get to do that project?
Well, the editor got him onto the book to begin with. I'd never met him before, but boy, I absolutely love his work. You know, um, I didn't hear many in terms of ideas, although I'm always open to
Mhm.
ideas from whoever I'm working with. But uh, I was I always loved the beauty of his work, the professionalism. He's a consummate professional, and I only met him I think once or twice, but we hit it off very very well, and I would work with him again anytime.
Mhm. Is there any characters that you feel you couldn't tell the story you wanted to tell, even if you work with them, a lot? There's something that you said, that story I wanted to tell. I never had the chance for whatever circumstance.
I had troubles when I was working on X-Man as opposed to X-Men, but singular,
Hmm.
um, because I would submit a plot and then I would get word back from the X-Men office that I couldn't do something like that because they were doing something like that in the main book. So I had to do something else. And so I would have to come back and come up with an entirely new plot. And I finally asked them, I said, well, look, just why don't you just give me a broad overview of where you're going? And that way I won't waste my time or yours. And they told me I didn't have a high enough security clearance. So eventually I left the book because it took two or three times as much time to write because I was guessing and getting too close to what they wanted to do themselves.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I guess that it's not worth the paycheck, right? When you have to write it three times because they are not informing you of what you can do, and what you can't do, right?
Right, right. You know, I don't get paid again to do the plot a second or third time.
Yeah.
So, and it takes up uh, the time that I have to work.
Hmm.
You know, so I'm essentially working for free.
And it's also, I guess it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, about the oomph to do the book, right? Like you're having fun, and when that happens, the fun is not is it is about the money, of course, but it's not even also only about the money. It's also about, do I really want to do this when it's so frustrating that I can't really know what story I can tell or not?
Yeah, yeah, and you're guessing, and you guess wrong. I mean, I'll give an example of a different book, and again at Marvel, um, Heroes for Hire. I
Mm-hmm.
had I had carte blanche. I was very free. I didn't have to worry about for the most part. I didn't have to worry about the characters being in other books, although we did use Wolverine at one point, and so you have to be careful there.
Mm-hmm.
But and also Pascal Ferry is such a wonderful artist,
Mm-hmm.
such a wonderful artist, such a nice guy too.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that I would work with at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm. That was before people ask. I was going to ask about Pascual too. If the relationship with him, the work, how was it to work with him?
Oh, just wonderful, just wonderful. What I loved is that the energy that leapt off the page
Mm-hmm.
that he does. He has that kind of dynamic thing that you would only associate with someone like Jack Kirby. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the same style at all, but there's that feel
Mm-hmm.
there, and that creates an excitement, to it, which it's exciting for me to write it, and it's exciting for the reader to read it.
Mm-hmm. And we've been at this for 1 hour and 16 minutes, just so you know. So I guess you gotta you gotta go back to life,
Yeah.
and to have lunch, I guess, because it's
Yes.
yes,
Game starts
it's
on
time.
time.
So one last, and I'll let you go if that's okay.
Sure.
Is there any stories? I would say here, create your own personal, whatever you're going to call it, more than Marvel DCs, that you've been stopping yourself from telling, saying, I'm not ready yet, but I know I'm going to tell this story before I retire, die, or whatever.
Hmm. Yes, I have lots of stories that I would like to do. For some reason or other, I haven't actually completed them, but some are wonderful stories that I just wish I had an outlet to do
Mm-hmm.
with. And in some cases, as I said, with Tom Mandrake, we have a character called Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Hallowed Ground is the name of the story, and I believe that's a graphic novel that's still available, I think. And then Jan and I have done our own character Hexer Dusk as
Mm-hmm.
well. This is again another case of character that we own and stuff. So and that is also now published and out, I believe. So and I think you can still order that through Kickstarter or through Indiegogo or something like that.
I hope we see it, and I hope we see those. As I said, those stories just you want to tell. That's the beauty of the current world, with Kickstarters and all that. That there's a lot more outlets, to publish stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a freedom for creators today. Now, I will say, like if you're going to go onto Kickstarter, you learn to appreciate what publishers do for you,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to do everything, and I mean everything
Mm-hmm.
else yourself. Um, in case of Jan, she is the one mailing it out, and you edit and publish and proofread it. She's the one been doing it all. If I was still living in New Jersey, I would be helping out with that more, but
Yeah.
I can't do it otherwise.
Yeah, it's a shame that we don't see in the US. Here in Spain, in Europe, we have a company that is called Spaceman Project, which is basically a hub for Kickstarters,
Yeah.
because they take care of the logistics, of all the parts of the work that creators don't want to do.
Oh,
They,
that's wonderful.
yeah, and they are amazing on that. They just they work the Kickstarter for you. but it's
Yeah.
a Kickstarter company. And I always say that there's something that it's needed also in the US. That a company that can take care of the parts that creators don't want or can't do. Literally,
Yeah.
it's like the logistics part, the distribution, and all that. And there's like, you work on it, and I'll take part of the logistics. I'll take a cut because I do the work for you. So
Yeah.
that's something that I think that should happen in the US, and hopefully will happen in the US very soon.
Yeah, because I think that would actually invigorate
Yeah.
The medium.
Yeah, absolutely. That comes to the question that I always ask. When the thing with Diamond happened because of the pandemic last year, I kept talking to publishers and asking them, do we really need the middleman? Because that's the question. If we need it, why? And why things need to change? Because the percentages, not only for the publishers, for the creators, need to grow. It's maybe the distribution need to getting a cut that they needed to get 50 years ago. But with the digital era, do we need to pay them as much as we do now, or things need to change?
Yeah. It depends. For instance, on there's the work on that. For instance, one of the things Jan had to find was who's going to be the printer.
Mm-hmm.
What deal are you going to get? When do you have to have it to them? What do you have to have for them? Making sure that they all do that. And when the creative people do that, it takes time out of doing what they're really good at, which is the creative stuff. There is a value to that. On the other hand, with DC and Marvel, they're going to own it all. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a percentage, and they will control it.
Yeah,
control which they should. They own the characters. They are responsible for those characters. But there's a limit on creativity. I think in Europe, you've always seen incredible talents coming out of it, and that's because I think there is more freedom for the creative talents there. So I will also say I've been in Spain once, and I found it very beautiful, and I had a wonderful time while I was there.
Thank you. And hopefully you will come back as soon as this crap is over.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely.
Okay, my friend. So thank you very much for being here.
I had a grand time.
And to all of you, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your comments and questions. Again, be decent. Wear your mask. We are still in a pandemic. Things are getting better, but it's not over. So please, careful people, okay? And see you tomorrow with Flavita Banana. Os veo mañana con Flavita Banana. Humor artist, humor, marvelous genius. Tomorrow, same time. Mañana a la misma hora. Y nos vamos. We're off. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
3, 2.